if there is one bright spot that comes out of the insanity of the last year, it is how obvious it is, at least for those of us who are willing to see it, how obvious it is that acceptable narratives are pushed and protected by a very powerful group of special interests, corporations, government officials, and mainstream media. Facebook has now reversed its decision about banning posts related to the Wuhan lab leak hypothesis, as some people have corrected me. I said theory in my last video. That's how a lot of people are describing it, but I can understand the distinction. So we'll call it hypothesis, okay? They're now going to allow people, the average person now is allowed to post about this because it's now a safe topic, all right? And because mainstream media has jumped on board, because Fauci, their guy, has decided, oh, now it's safe to talk about it. So now they're like, oh, okay, now we'll talk about it. So what I said in my last video about this is beware that this is not a shift in journalism, okay? This is not a shift in all of a sudden they're like, aha, we've investigated this and now we have more information and now we're ahead of the curve. No. The safe people, once again, have made a statement and now mainstream news is just going after it, okay? In their same little safe space. Have you ever seen one of those tot soccer games? Let's talk like 4 and 5 year olds, okay? And, if you know soccer, that was my sport growing up. There are actual positions on the field and people play positions and you're sort of supposed to hang out in those areas and kind of stay ahead of the game. You're supposed to be watching where the ball may come in your particular area and then be ready to keep it, whether you're on offense and you're going to then take it to the goal or you're on defense and you're going to make sure it doesn't, get into your own net. All right. But when you watch these tot soccer players, these young soccer players, they just chase the ball wherever it goes. It's like there's no rhyme or reason. They just chase the ball. There's just mass crowd like bumblebees and they're just chasing it all over the place. And that's exactly what's happening here right now. The ball is the establishment narrative and the mainstream journalists they're just chasing it all over the field. And I chose this headline because it's kind of hilarious, but a lot of what they say here is really reflective of what I'm talking about. So the headline, this is from Politico. Facebook no longer treating man-made COVID as crackpot idea. Okay. And that's exactly it. And that's like, it's the nice way of saying it would be, actually conspiracy theory would probably be the nice way at this point, but this is exactly right. Okay. Crackpot idea is how this was treated for a long time. And you know what? This video is not even about the Wuhan lab. Okay. This is about mainstream news, legacy news, and how COVID-19 has been treated by not just journalists who have been basically just trusting bureaucratic sources, again, what my last video was about, but how they've been shaming and trying to silence the voices that have been way ahead of the curve on this. And not just ahead of the curve, but these actual debates over particular topics, whether it's lockdowns, whether it's the vaccine, whether it's about the virus itself, whatever it is, there are actual real conversations happening among scientists and doctors, real concerns, real debates that have not been allowed into the town square by Facebook, by YouTube, by Twitter, and by the journalists who think that that was a good thing. All the disinformation that was put out there. We got to put a stop to it. I've talked before about how I saw, one of my friends, this was related to the election. But when you call for speech suppression on one end, you're calling for it along the gamut, in my opinion, okay? It doesn't just end where you think it should end. When you're called for speech suppression, you're basically calling for big tech to babysit us with whatever they consider to be a safe place for us to play on our nice little play mats, okay? They're dictating where that ball goes on the soccer field, and then we all just get to chase it around. All right, we don't necessarily get to choose, like, when we're calling for speech suppression on one thing. Okay, that just stop there. Okay, but stop there. No, that's not how it works. It goes along the continuum, and it just follows that safe space soccer ball wherever it's supposed to go. So this is essentially what happens, right? They're saying Facebook will no longer take down posts claiming that COVID-19 was man-made or manufactured, a company spokesperson told Politico on Wednesday, a move that acknowledges the renewed debate about the virus's origins. And then they go on to say, a narrative in flux. Facebook's policy tweak arrives as support surges in Washington for a fuller investigation into the origins of COVID-19. After the Wall Street Journal reported that 3 scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were hospitalized in late 2019 with symptoms consistent with the virus. The findings have reinvigorated the debate about the so-called Wuhan lab leak theory, once dismissed as a fringe conspiracy theory. Okay, 2 quick things here. First off, apparently the government now allows it to be a safe talking point. Okay, that's basically what they're saying. Support surges in Washington for a fuller investigation. Okay, so let's just be clear here. The writing in this is not saying, we've done this investigation, we have looked into the findings, the statements, we're ahead of the curve on A, B, or C, and we're critiquing the government and their original statements. No, they're just saying now government officials are debating this more, so it's safe. So because the government's saying it, we can talk about it. That was exactly the point of my last video. Was the trust of bureaucratic sources. This is just a reflection of this. This is just, I think a lot of people are like, oh, wow, even journalists probably are saying, okay, now we're critiquing the accepted ideas. Okay, now we're critiquing the accepted ideas. Maybe it did. No, you're not critiquing the accepted ideas. This is now an accepted idea, and you're just regurgitating it. And so, like I said, I don't even care what you think about the idea that this was manipulated in a lab in Wuhan. I don't even care, because that's not the point of this video. If you want to talk about the evidence behind that, for, against, whatever, go look at another video about that. You'll get way more out of it. This is me just saying, this is just jumping from one government narrative to another government narrative. And that's what's happening here. It's just, it's so blatantly obvious who's driving the conversations, or at least it should be. So, I look at this and I say, is this going to cause some of my former peers to sit back and say, maybe rallying for speech suppression is not a good idea? Because this is so obvious how quickly the switch flips, that it's either government officials, special interests, big corporations, whatever it is, it dictates what's a safe thing to talk about. And the second that they start opening the conversation, now we're allowed to talk about it anymore. Maybe there will be like 1 or 2 who will sit back and say, maybe our calls for censorship were not a good idea. Because this should be obvious to everybody who is paying attention, who even cares to pay attention, who's interested in this topic, that this is not about disinformation. This is not about truth versus fact, okay? This is just about safety for whatever reason. Safety because we don't want the plebs to figure out what's going on here. Safety because it protects one or another interest of government officials, of big corporations. Whatever the reason is, this is not about tech companies suppressing speech because it's false or debunked. It's just because the wrong people were saying it. Now, the right people are saying it. So now we're allowed to talk about it. That's how this works. One of the most damaging effects of this is the oversimplified understanding of reality, which comes from these tech companies basically locking down the nuances of conversations that are happening so that you get a tweet like this. I see posts like this constantly all day long, categorizing people who are even debating the COVID-19 vaccine like this. Okay, let's watch this real fast. Not sure if you can hear it. I'm going to turn the volume up, but basically this is a bull that is essentially flipping people over. I've been to rodeos. I've never seen this before. I will say not something I'm super interested in participating in, but whatever. The point, though, is that this is what the tweet says. We'll go do whatever the hell this is, but 100% won't get the vaccine. So what are they saying? Well, first off, they're making fun of these people, saying that you would rather get gored by a bull than get a vaccine. Okay, so like you live in rural America, you're not thinking clearly because you think this is fun. All right, you think this is fun, but you won't get the vaccine. Like, you're stupid, you're redneck, you know, all of these sort of undertones of this, saying that those are the people who are questioning whether or not everything we're hearing about the COVID-19 vaccine in the mainstream news by government health officials is correct, or whether we should even be able to debate it at all, or whether we should have a choice, whether we should you know, have a choice going back to employment about whether or not we get it, whether the government should be able to force us. Like, anyone who's debating this kind of stuff is someone who would also prefer to get gored by a bull, okay? Like, this is how oversimplified and stupid these conversations have become because of speech suppression, because we are not seeing that there are actual PhDs and MDs who are having conversations about this particular topic. Why? Because corporations, cheered on by mainstream corporate news and by the government, are suppressing dissent. They're suppressing dissent, and the vast majority of people, I think, okay, are just going along to get along. You know, I was one of those people who was just trying to get her job done every day. It didn't cross my screen. And so I just think it's not there until I start realizing that no, it's not that it's not there. There's just an active campaign to keep it away from my consciousness. Anyway, I did just see in one of the replies as I was switching to the screen that particular event is called Cowboy Pinball. So definitely leave me a comment in the comment section if you participated in Cowboy Pinball, or what do you think about this particular topic? And if you are watching this on YouTube, consider switching to one of my other platforms. The links are in the description for how to do that and support my work. If you are watching on one of those other platforms, thank you for doing that, and I will see you next time.